Yeah.
Because I was
Yeah.
thinking I can't really think.
No. 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 I just got back from camping the last couple of days, like last night we got back.
Nice.
So it was
How
so
strange.
nice. So it was so nice to come back and be like, okay, so you've written a draft out of questions. It's wonderful.
It's wonderful. It's so amazing.
Yes. Yes. But I'm always nervous about the like.
Check.
I don't know. Yeah. No, it's all the time.
Embarrassing.
everyone, and welcome to Artsvote Canada 2021. This EC3 Cultural Incubator is a meeting of the federal candidates in the 2021 election, and the topic tonight is arts, culture, and heritage. We're delighted to have all of you here, everybody who's here in person and everybody who's watching on YouTube. It's an honor and a privilege to have you with us. Before I go any farther, I'd like to acknowledge that we are in the traditional territory of the Treaty 20 Mississauga peoples and the traditional territory of the Mississauga and Chippewa nations. And these are collectively known as the Williams Treaty First Nations, including Curve Lake, Hiawatha, Alderville, Scugog Island, Rama, Beausoleil, and Georgina Islands. And we want to say that we're very grateful to be here, and we want to acknowledge that the people that I just mentioned, the people whose lands these are, have been here for millennia, taking care of the land, being guardians of the land, and we want to support them in that work and join with them on a path to truth and reconciliation. It's a really serious part of what we do at EC3, and we want to encourage all of the arts organizations and people that we partner with to do the same. But tonight, it's all about federal politics. It's all about support for arts, culture, and heritage. I just wanted to let people know, in case there's anyone who doesn't know, that EC3, the Electric City Culture Council, is Peterborough's Municipal Arts Council. We're an arm's-length service agency and organization, and we provide about 13 programs and services that support the arts, culture, and heritage sector, including grant programs, research, advocacy, festivals, and, of course, all of the Artsvote events, and a wide selection of professional development workshops, artists in residence programs, and very soon we'll be announcing Peterborough's first poet laureate. You can also, in addition to watching on YouTube, ask questions on YouTube in the comments section. If you're asking questions, Gabe Pollock, EC3's research lead and program coordinator, will let me know, and we'll provide the question to the candidates. Yeah, on the YouTube page, right? Yeah, that's how you do it, on the YouTube page. So before I go any further, I'd like to name the candidates and acknowledge the very distinguished people we have with us here tonight. Joy. Say hello.
Hello, everyone. I'm Joy LaChica, and I'm your federal NDP candidate. It's wonderful to be here with you this evening.
Thank you. Shantae.
Hello, everybody. My name is Shantae White, and I am your Green Party candidate for Peterborough-Kawartha. Thank you so much for having me here tonight.
Bonjour, Anin, salam alaikum, and Mariam Monsef, and I'm running for re-election as your Liberal Member of Parliament.
Thank you all for being here tonight. Michelle Ferreri from the Conservative Party is not here with us tonight. She has sent a video which will show when the panelists are doing their opening presentations. I wanted to also introduce everyone in the room and everyone who's watching to our distinguished panel of arts experts. And I'm just going to quickly do this. Nadine Changfoot at the far end of the table from Trent University, and she'll introduce herself more fully when she asks her question. Finn Leach, curator at the Art Gallery of Peterborough. Emily Martin, queen of Showplace. Alicia Rubashaw. It's only been 5 years. Alicia, like Kate's story and many of the people in the arts, wears many hats with Bird Varied Press and also a full-time worker with the Nourish Project. And Kate's story, writer, artist, performer, organizer of the Theatre on King and the Precarious Festival. Thank you all for being here tonight, and thank you for the work you've done to get your questions ready. As I said, tonight we're talking about arts and culture, and the very, very crucial role that the federal government plays in the development and sustainability of the arts in this country. Without well thought out and strategic policies and programs, Dancers can't dance, painters can't paint, and performers can't perform. Well, they could, but it's really hard for them to survive doing it without federal government support. That means if we don't provide the support, if we don't provide the programs, if we don't ensure the infrastructure, we won't have books to read, films to watch, or music to listen to. It means that concert venues and art galleries are closed and shuttered. Well, in the end, our lifeblood runs dry. Stories disappear, identity shatters, hope fades, knowledge slips, and imagination disintegrates. Those are just some of the things that the arts bring to our lives. As Marcuse said, without the arts, we can't imagine a different world than the one we live in, and we can't imagine a better world. We want to learn tonight what each of the parties has in mind to make sure that this doesn't happen. But I want to provide a little bit of local context for this discussion. EC3 currently works with more than 65 arts and heritage organizations in every discipline, including professional groups, paraprofessional groups, and amateur organizations. And these groups include creators, presenters, distributors, venues, educators, and other people who work in the field. There are arts organizations that engage people of all ages in our city and artists working in every discipline. These groups present over 2,000 events a year. They engage audiences of more than 500,000 citizens. And that's more than local sports, as Mayor Bennett frequently reminded us. The arts pump more than $5 million directly into the economy and almost $100 million in economic spin-offs. That's a huge economic engine. More than 2,000 volunteers contribute time and energy to the success of these organizations, and they employ more than 100 full-time equivalent citizens and taxpayers, and they regularly create new jobs. These arts organizations bring new money to the city through government grants, corporate sponsorships, fundraising activities, and from private foundations. They keep the downtown thriving. They beautify through public art and outdoor programming. According to the folks at Peterborough Economic Development, Peterborough-Kawartha Economic Development, they attract new businesses and professionals who are looking for a stimulating experience, an urban experience, but in a small city. They're able to build extraordinary partnerships that make the dollars and the impacts they generate go further through strategic investments and value-added collaborations. And just to give you an idea of what that looks like, during Arts Week 2018, which was the last time we did Arts Week, EC3 had partnerships with more than 80 small businesses and organizations in the city. And I think that's a real testimony to the flexibility and the capacity to collaborate and build partnerships that this sector has. And those collaborations crossed health and social services organizations. It was quite remarkable. And I think almost everyone who's listening in tonight or who's here in the room will know that many organizations, including UNESCO, the Canadian Association of Municipalities, and the Canadian Mental Health Association, acknowledge that the arts play a crucial role in our mental health, in our civic identity, and in the vitality of our cities. They spark creativity and innovation in the business sector. Think about our First Fridays. Think about Metaphor and Watson and Lou. They decrease isolation and build community cohesion, and they contribute to better mental health, decreasing stress, fright, and fight depression, and they improve physical fitness. They support youth and people experiencing homelessness. They connect seniors, providing learning, recreational, and social experiences. They help give marginalized voices a place to talk. They bring light to hidden histories. They bring silent stories to life. They welcome new Canadians. They help the tourism industry. All in all, we want to say that the arts are not a frill. They're really essential to making Peterborough a great place to live and a place where all kinds of people can be successful and find a home. So we're really excited to know what each of the parties plan to do, what their platforms are, how they imagine the arts, and how they might support the arts over the next 4 years. Thank you very much. You don't have to.
I just miss clapping
Thank
in
you.
the theater.
All right. Now, coming up first, the panel's going to have to help me because I keep forgetting who's going first.
I'm first,
You first?
if
Thank
you'll
you.
have me.
I would have you any day. Okay. And now I can't find your bio, which seems odd. So, Shantae, I'm going to ask you to introduce yourself. Oh, here it is. Couldn't have gone very far. Hang on one second. Well, this is so hard. It's live TV. Somebody do a dance. Kate, kick your legs. Shantae White is with us from the Green Party. She is a second-generation Canadian, born to immigrant parents from Guyana and Jamaica, and she grew up in Toronto. She is a recent graduate of Trent University in Peterborough with an honors degree in environmental studies and a minor in political studies. She has a deep love for nature and the environment and is a leading member of the Climate Reality Project, a not-for-profit founded by U.S. Vice President Al Gore. Shantae's passion for politics stems from her desire to better her local community and her overarching goal of dismantling racial injustice in Canada. She has spent years volunteering within the community, advocating for youth, and working with politicians for more accessible mental health care, environmental protections, affordable education, and many other of the crucial issues facing Canadians today. Shantae White has published several articles on environmental policy for Electric City magazine. Gabe is over here, the former publisher and editor of Electric City magazine, and most recently collaborated with the District Mental Health Department to develop a policy scan to identify gaps in climate change mitigation policies. Shantae loves her community and enjoys being part of progress. Shantae, you have 5 minutes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I would like to thank everybody for inviting me here today, all the organizers, everybody in attendance here, everybody watching at home. I know what you're thinking. When you look at me, you think, excuse me, she's smart, attractive, but she's running for the Green Party. She's a dead man walking in this election. She can never win. So why am I running? I'm running because I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful that voters will have witnessed what has gone on this past summer and realize that something has to change. The Liberals will tell you they've invested billions in climate change, but then they bought a pipeline. A pipeline delivering fuel to be burned and cause greenhouse gas emissions. Voters are not stupid. They understand that buying a pipeline is like putting out a fire with gasoline. The Conservatives don't even have a plan. Their platform says they'll move in the direction of the Paris targets. Well, every time I take a step eastward down the street, I'm moving closer to Paris, France. But unless I buy a ticket, I'm not moving to Paris. Voters aren't stupid. In the next few days, the Liberal leader will start to scare you into thinking that unless you vote Liberal, you're going to have a mean-spirited Conservative in charge, someone who will imitate Stephen Harper and Mike Harris. They'll say vote strategic and vote Liberal. Conservatives will say, watch out. The Liberals are going to raise your taxes and take away your gun rights and rack up another $1 trillion in debt. This is all great rhetoric if you want to motivate people with fear. Well, today I'm asking residents to vote with their hopes and not their fears. As a Green Party candidate, I support our plan to set real emissions targets. I'm hopeful that we can create millions of jobs by retrofitting every single building in Canada to be carbon neutral. I'm hopeful that a handful of Greens elected to Parliament can push through a guaranteed livable income so that we can finally solve the seemingly intractable poverty that we see on the streets of Peterborough. I'm hopeful that a handful of Green MPs will push the government, Conservative or Liberal, to finally fix the water on First Nations reserves. Enough excuses, enough delays. Finally, I'm hopeful that Green MPs will never leave Canadians behind, not on the streets of Peterborough and not on the streets of Kabul. That's why I wear this Canadian flag pin, because I'm a hopeful Canadian. That's why I'm running and asking our residents to vote with their hopes and not their fears. I look forward to speaking with you all today and answering all of your questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Shantae. Okay, everybody, talk right into your mics. Thank you very much, Gabe. Okay, Miriam.
Okay.
Thank you for being here tonight.
Oh, thank you for having me. And many thanks for that lovely and well thought out land acknowledgement. I've got my chicken scratch notes, I've got some numbers, I've got my debate binder, but honestly, nothing could have prepared me for walking in through those doors and seeing the space that so many memories have been shaped, and then seeing Erica Cherney's name on that wall. Thank you so much for bringing us together for this important conversation. Many thanks to the Peterborough Arts Recovery Alliance for your incredible work during the pandemic, for all the ways you convened, for all the ways you advocated, and for all the ways you ensured that the voices of creators and producers, artists, were reflected in Budget 2021. And special thanks to the distinguished panel and you, Sudhita. You are a force to be reckoned with. Anybody who knows Sue knows this. The woman gets things done, and our community and arts, culture, and heritage is better off for you.
Thank you. It's very kind.
I want to speak to each discipline and all the ways that you've been affected by the pandemic, about the pandemic supports that the Government of Canada has provided, and about what the Liberal government will support for arts, culture, and heritage if re-elected. I know that artists, it's been hard to have your showings. It's been difficult to watch shows get canceled. It's heartbreaking to see theaters shuttered. For musicians, those venues have been shut down. You've been unable to practice your crafts, and the rest of us have missed out on the sounds of music and vibrancy, particularly in our downtown. For writers, if you've been fortunate enough to be published, your book tour didn't really happen. You didn't get to have that book launch that you dreamed up when that book first started whispering to you. And for performing arts, those downtown spaces that filled up well a year in advance, well, those shows didn't go on. And though we long for it, we know that performing arts will be among the last to return to normal on the other side of the pandemic. To those art spaces, galleries, organizations, the bars and the restaurants that created the space for artists, we know that it's been tough. And while government supports were there, through CERB, through wage subsidy, through rental supports, through the cultural funds that were in place, it's been difficult and devastating. We've been able to, thanks to EC3, understand more what producers and creators and arts organizations have gone through. And we've been able to ensure that your voices have carried into Parliament. Hutchison House Museum, Lang Pioneer Village, the Canadian Canoe Museum, Fourth Line Theatre, Musicfest, and Showplace here are among those who received supports through the Tourism Resilience Fund. But there is more to be done. And I will speak to that tonight, but I also want to acknowledge that artists are also citizens. and climate change matters to you. And the Liberal Party of Canada is offering the most comprehensive climate action plan forward. You have loved ones, children and elders, who will benefit from $10 a day childcare and the investments we're putting into long-term care standards and income security. You care about reconciliation and women's rights and LGBT rights, and you want to make life more affordable, including with additional investments in housing. A re-elected Liberal government will launch a new arts and recovery program that will match ticket sales for performing arts, live theaters, and other cultural venues to compensate for reduced capacity. We will extend COVID insurance-related coverage for media production stoppage to support 150,000 jobs. And we will support Canadian feature films by permanently increasing funding to Telefilm by $50 million. There's additional investments in CBC and other artists as well, and I look forward to going into detail through our conversation tonight. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Miriam. Now, I think I'm nervous because we're live streaming tonight, and I have to apologize, I forgot Miriam's introduction. So with your permission, I'd like to go ahead and provide an introduction to our elected Member of Parliament. She was elected most recently to the House of Commons in October 2015 was the first time, and she currently serves as Canada's Minister for Women and Gender Equality and Minister of Rural Economic Development. As Peterborough-Kawartha MP, Miriam has made real progress on local priorities, securing $498 million in federal funding investments for our community. This includes funding for housing, major transit upgrades, local infrastructure, and rural high-speed internet, and many green initiatives. Prior to running for office, Miriam worked for local organizations, including Trent University and Fleming College, the YWCA of Peterborough and Haliburton, the Ontario Public Interest Research Group, or OPIRG, and the New Canadian Centre. She has a Bachelor of Science in Psychology from Trent University. Thanks, Miriam. Sorry for that glitch. All righty. Now, as many of you know, Michelle Ferreri is not with us tonight. Michelle is the candidate for the Conservative Party in Peterborough-Kawartha. She was born in Douro, Ontario, and has been a resident of Peterborough-Kawartha her entire life. Michelle is a well-known community advocate, an award-winning entrepreneur, a committed volunteer, and a highly sought-after public speaker, social media marketer, and influencer. Her passion, determination, innovation, and advocacy work has earned her 2 RBC Canadian Women Entrepreneur Award nominations. Michelle's desire to serve the community in the political arena stems from her experience as a communicator and community leader in the Peterborough-Kawartha area. A lifelong learner, her education in science has led her to be a passionate advocate for physical and mental health. Michelle is a graduate of Trent University in biology and anthropology, and from Loyalist College in biotechnology. She has 3 children between the ages of 12 and 17 and shares her life with her partner Ryan and his 3 daughters. So we do have a video that Michelle's campaign prepared and sent in, and I know our fearless technicians will take that away, and you'll be able to see it here in the room and on YouTube.
Hello everyone, fellow candidates, Artsvote. Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity. I'm sorry I couldn't be there in person. Arts and culture in Peterborough-Kawartha is obviously very near and dear to my heart and personal. It's how I got my start in broadcasting. It is, the heartbeat of who we are. Our arts and culture community is incredibly important, from our theatre guild to Showplace. St. James is how I got my start. And for me, with the Conservative platform, what I love about it is that it keeps the economy running. And so for so many arts programs in our community, they rely heavily on sponsorships and businesses to keep things rolling. And that is exactly what we're going to offer for our community, to make sure that small businesses are supported, including people like myself who do sponsor arts programs and do all of these things. We also have a new hire program as well to get people back into the workforce, which hopefully we can do with some of our industry that has been so hard hit during this pandemic. So those who have been off work for more than 6 months, employers will have an opportunity to subsidize 50% of that wage. Less than 6 months, it will be 25%. As well, we have a Main Street incentive as well. So if you're investing in your infrastructure, we will be giving a tax credit up to 25% at $100,000. So if any of our buildings or local theater groups, Theater on King, all of these amazing organizations in our community need that infrastructure, we will be here to support them. We need the arts, and I think we've realized that more than ever before in this pandemic. It is an outlet, it is a creative outlet. I'm proud to be a part of the arts community, and working alongside some of the greats like Beth McMaster, who is a proud conservative, who said, without our conservatives and without the sponsorship and without a solid economy, we can't provide the services we do in the arts and theater community. So thank you so much for allowing me to submit this video. And again, I apologize I couldn't be there in person, and I look forward to supporting the arts and culture in this community. Our amazing musicians, wow, we have the richest arts community here, and I'm so proud of it. And I will represent it as best I can if you elect me, Michelle Ferreri, September 20th.
There we go. Okay. Steve and Gabe and Mike, that will be available permanently on YouTube, is that right? Yes, it will. Okay, thank you. All right, Joy Lachia, our NDP candidate, is a teacher, a labor leader, and an activist. She's dedicated her life to standing up for students, families, and education workers in Peterborough-Kawartha. An elementary school teacher with more than 25 years of experience, she understands the challenges students and working families face. Joy saw firsthand how hard the pandemic was on students and young people. When they needed help the most, Joy worked tirelessly to fight for the safety and well-being of students, education workers, and families. Joy knows that we are stronger when we work together. She's defended good jobs in our community as a labor leader and helps to make education better across the province as a member of the Elementary Teachers Federation of Ontario Executive Council. Joy moved to Canada with her family as a child from the Philippines. She understands the challenges faced by new Canadians and has always worked to build a future where racism, discrimination, homophobia, and transphobia have no place in Canada. Joy, thank you.
Thank you very much for that introduction, Sue. It's really lovely to be here. I have to say the environment in this room is just so welcoming and just such a comfortable environment to be in. So thank you for making it that way.
Pleasure.
And so appreciated your remarks and all that you shared at the beginning. And it's been nice to meet several of the folks in the room in different places and spaces. I am new to Peterborough, and I'll just say that from the outset. In your introduction, Sue, you mentioned in my education roles, my connection to Peterborough-Kawartha. My life as an educator has been primarily in Toronto, and in my ATFO role, I have had presence and connection, and I've been here and know many of the educators here through the Elementary Teachers Federation of Ontario. So I just wanted to clarify that. And again, thank you so much. I know that this is put on not only by EC3, but the Alliance of the Peterborough Arts Group. And it was just so wonderful to see everyone involved in this. Public Energy Artspace, Peterborough Singers, Showplace, Market Hall, Trent Radio, the Theater on King Artspace, Orchestras Canada, and Spark Photo Festival. And I just so appreciate the invitation and the welcome that my family and myself have had here in Peterborough in this last year since we've lived here. We bought a home back in September of last year, and I have had a little place not far from here for 18 years. So it's sort of a stomping ground, and it's wonderful to consolidate our lives here. But who am I? I'm going to share a little bit more about myself, things that perhaps Sue didn't mention. I'm a parent, and I'm a partner in a 2S LGBTQ family, and I'm an Indigenous ally, although my partner and my daughter happen to be Métis. There are lots of intersections in me, and one thing that has been so at the center of my heart are the arts, and it's been a very important layer of my own identity through my life. Music and theater have always been central to my life over years and years. And being a teacher is actually an ideal profession if you want to have your feet in the arts, because we do get holidays and breaks and things like that. And I've always been involved in theater and music and the arts where I've lived in my years as a teacher. I've been involved in play creation groups. I've done performance. I've been a stage manager for the Fringe and for Summer Works. I've been in a band. I've been a part of companies, boards of theaters in Toronto like Nightwood and Buddies in Bad Times, and a part of production teams for various plays and events. So the arts are very close to my heart, and the people I know and my family of friends are artists. And I know the host of players it takes to make the magic of the brilliant moments we experience as an audience before and after a curtain rises or falls. And I think of this pandemic and how with all of the folks that make up the community of in the arts in Peterborough-Kawartha, just how deep the impact has been. And my heart is there because I can only imagine. And I know that recovery is something that happens when something's over, but we're not finished with it yet. I find that the arts truly do bring us together, and we know that governments need to support the arts as well as the community that brings the arts together. We need to see a change in funding because we've suffered since the Harper cuts of 2012 and forward, and we know that there has not been any real change in funding. We need to protect and strengthen the arts from the blight of those years, especially as we enter a fourth wave of a pandemic and just an uncertain time. We're happy that things are open, but we need to make a plan. And New Democrats want to make sure that funding is stabilized, that we provide long-term stable funding for Canadian arts and cultural institutions, the Canada Council, Canadian Heritage recipients. We need that. We need to invest in Indigenous theatre. We need to income tax leverage to make life more affordable for artists. I'd like to do that if you elect me as a New Democrat to Ottawa. I'll bring your voice there. Thank you.
Thank you, Joy. Okay, candidates, you did a great job presenting yourselves, introducing yourselves to the audience tonight, and letting us know in a very general way what your thinking is on the arts, what your experience is in the field, and where your party platform is heading. But now we get to the nitty-gritty with our panel of experts and their deep dives into the tough issues of the day. I want to say another hello to everybody out there in the live stream audience. Please take a look at the link. Send your questions to Gabe Pollock. I know some of the members of the audience here in the Nexicom Lounge also have questions. And if you need further resources, go to the EC3 website. You'll see the platforms of all the parties and the summaries and comparisons of party platforms prepared by Maclean's and Orchestras Canada. Expert panel, are you ready? Okay, then, because she's to my right, and she's fabulous, Kate Story, artist, performer, arts administrator, award-winning writer, leader at the Theatre on King, and director of the Precarious Festival. Take us away with our first question. What's your topic, Kate?
Well, thank you very much, and thank you to the candidates who arrived in person. I really appreciate your dedication to this topic, and I just want to say I feel like it's an all too infrequent event that we hear politicians talking about arts and culture. So for me, the fact that you came is a strike. Hello, yes, thank you, thumbs up. Will you go on record to acknowledge that arts and culture are a vital part of the economy, not a frill, that employ tens of thousands of people and contribute billions of dollars to the economy? But more importantly to me, will you go on record affirming that the arts also help make communities, large and small, livable? Artists are the ones making art, and we need greatly increased investment in our work, investment tied to the self-articulated needs of creators. Will you commit to supporting this sector and the artists who make the work? Thank you.
Let's follow our different order and we'll go down to Marion.
Sure thing. Thank you, Kate. The answer is absolutely yes. Yes and yes. The arts and arts education saved my life, but we've also heard Sue and many others make the economic case for artists and arts in our community. I know we're all longing for the days when doors will be open and the sound of music can be heard. We're all longing for the days when young people and young at heart are practicing their craft and bringing joy to the rest of us. And certainly I'm committed to a healthy recovery for artists, but so is a Liberal government. We've been there with billions in investments in our first two mandates. And if you take a look under the chapter in our platform, which I'm sure everybody's read thoroughly, about a resilient recovery and a resilient economy, you will see the prominence that arts, culture, and heritage has in our plan to create jobs, good jobs, and support folks. The last thing that I will say here as well, those of you who continue to fight, who continue to innovate, who continue to talk to each other and convene, I'll continue to be there, and yes, I will show up, but I will go out of my way to make sure that your voice is heard in Parliament, in committees, as I have as a cabinet minister.
Thank you, Marion. Right, we're going to switch it up a little bit and ask Joy if she could answer the question now.
Thank you very much, Sue. And I wholeheartedly do commit to the arts and to supporting the arts as a vital piece of life and what makes a community and what drives the economy in this beautiful Peterborough-Kawartha. I was saying earlier that the Conservative cuts starting in 2012 were debilitating. And added to that, the further gutting to Canadian heritage, to CBC and to the Film Board were insufferable. And we know so many who in the arts who have been impacted, who have worked in those areas and do work in those areas. And then all of that followed by 6 years of no real change in funding to protect and strengthen the arts. And in coming to Peterborough, I've been listening and I've been talking to folks in the arts and learning about the resilience, the steadfastness and solidarity of this community support one for the other. And that's been a mainstay. But we have to have local, municipal, federal, and provincial, all levels of government coming together to value the arts and to support it in a new way, in a transformative way, especially in a pandemic, and for all the reasons that Sue stated. It's transformative, the power of the arts. And as we know, we have about, if we were to name an example of the theater, film, and arts community, 180,000 people work in this field, and it's a $9 billion industry across Canada. and they are good family-sustaining jobs. But we need to support our artists. This community has suffered so greatly. We will, as New Democrats, fight for the arts in a very defined platform to create new funding, to create change in a new digital media world as well.
Okay. Sorry, Joy.
That's
Really
okay.
inspiring, but I have to cut you off to be fair. Thank you very much. Shantae, do you need the question repeated?
Sure. You can
I
repeat,
thought maybe
please.
because it's
Thank you.
it's a lot of chatting here.
Will you go on record, Shantae, to acknowledge that arts and culture are a vital part of the economy, not a frill? And will you go on record affirming that the arts also help make communities, large and small, livable? Artists are the ones making art, and I mean, I say this because I think that gets lost sometimes. We need greatly increased investment in our work, and that investment needs to be tied to the self-articulated needs of creators. Will you commit to supporting this sector and the artists who make the work?
Thank you. The Green Party wholeheartedly supports more investments into the arts. I myself have a long history with the arts. I was a competitive dancer for 12 years, and I even went on to teach at my home studio. So I know personally just how much the arts impact the lives of children and the communities that these people take part in these activities in. We recognize and support the existing programs of Heritage Canada and its agencies. This is one of the reasons why our green innovation is to add direct funding opportunities for creators and producers to engage with the climate crisis in order to increase public support for meaningful government and action. The Green Party of Canada believes that federal support for Canada's creative sector must be adjusted to give our artists a clear incentive to address the priority issue facing all of humanity, the climate emergency.
Thank you, Shantae.
Thank you.
So we just finished the first round, and Kate, thank you for that great question. You can do a follow-up if you want, Kate, with any of them. You have 2 minutes for that. But also, every candidate has a 2-minute closing statement opportunity. So if they feel there are things that you want to rebut, keep note of them, and that can be part of your closing statement. Kate, if you're okay, we'll go on to the next question. Or
I'm going to do a follow-up question to wait till the questions.
you'd like to wait? All done? All righty. Alicia, you're up next.
Okay. Should I introduce myself again, or?
Yes, of
Okay.
course. I'm so sorry.
All right. Hi, I'm Alicia Rubishaw. I work for Nourish at the YWCA in Peterborough, and I'm a writer and a publisher at Birdberry Press, and I'm on the board of EC3. So, hello, candidates. I was happy to see that several of the party platforms in this election included promises to the arts community. But unfortunately, I couldn't help but notice that few of these would support individual artists. Arts workers are consistently left behind, despite our enormous contributions to this community and to our country. Much of the funding available to us is project-based, and it is extremely work-intensive to access, as well as highly competitive. While I'm grateful for these grant programs and would like to see them sustained, I am also aware of how many artists would benefit from more flexible funds that would support general subsistence. A federal basic income guarantee would support not only artists, but all people living on low incomes who struggle to make ends meet. The basic income policy that most Canadian advocates are working towards is income tested and would therefore only go to those who need it. Does your party support a federal basic income guarantee, and if so, how would it be implemented?
Basic income question. And Shantae, maybe we'll have you go first this time. Thank you.
Thank you. So the Green Party has long advocated for a guaranteed livable income. This is something that we already do for many groups within Canada already. We have benefits for seniors as well as benefits for young people. So it's time that we take care of all Canadians and push through a guaranteed livable income. Through the creation of a comprehensive and equitable guaranteed livable income for each person in Canada, we would be building on the market basket measure. A payment would be set at a livable level for different regions of the community. The federal government would provide an initial base level subsidy across the country and an intergovernmental body would determine and administer the necessary supplemental amounts. The Guaranteed Livable Income Program would cover everyone, with a benefit amount gradually increasing as other income supplies decrease. Like I said, seniors and child benefits would remain in place. This would just be a benefit to help the people in the middle who are suffering more than the people who don't need it. Thank you.
Thank you, Shantae. Miriam, basic income question.
Thanks for your question, and I'm a strong advocate for basic income within the Liberal team, and I will remain so. The conversations I've had with Joël Favreau, with Al Cabal, and the entire basic income advocacy group here in Peterborough-Kawartha and across the country has been instrumental in making sure that approach and proposal is well understood within the Liberal caucus. I also believe in a living wage, and that's part of what a re-elected Liberal government will move forward with for about 100,000 workers across the country. For those individual supports that you referred to, in addition to extending COVID-related insurance coverage for media production stoppages to 150,000 workers, we'll be implementing a transitional program to provide emergency relief to artists, to craftspeople, creators, and authors who are primarily self-employed or independent contractors, and will ensure that artists and cultural workers are considered within the upcoming reforms to the employment insurance system. We're also adding permanent funding to telefilm, an additional $50 million. We're ensuring more stable funding for the music sector with an additional $50 million to the Canada Music Fund. And I see that my time is up, so I look forward to the follow-up question. Thank you. Like this? This is okay.
What is it Bill Kimball always taught me? Make love to the microphone, Sujita.
Oh dear.
I know you don't believe that our shy Bill said that, but he did. He's told me that many times. Sometimes he even calls me Susie Q when he's saying it. I'm going to switch it up a little bit here. Thank you, Miriam. And on to Nadine. Yes. Oh, Joy.
That's okay.
Joy, I'm so sorry.
That's all right, no problem.
I need a long rest, Joy. So that was a basic income question.
Right. And absolutely, New Democrats believe in a guaranteed basic income. We see that there is just a growing disparity across the nation in terms of, compounded by the pandemic. The haves and the have-nots, the gap is growing wider and wider, and it impacts everyone. And we know that with austerity governments that have been in place for some time, that the wealthy, the ultra-wealthy, are not always paying their fair share. So there needs to be a revisiting of the tax system so that things like the 15% each year, the tax rate paid by people earning less than $49,000, are the same as billionaires. And billionaires are making, the richest billionaires made $78 billion more through the pandemic. And it's just outrageous that these loopholes have not been closed. New Democrats intend to do that, create a guaranteed basic income, and provide a structure for more funding for the arts from a federal level and in collaboration with the provinces and municipalities as well. We need to do something about it swiftly.
Thank you very much, Joy. Glad to hear you say municipalities. Contributions from municipalities. We're very keen on those, aren't we, people? Yes. All right. Nadine Changfoot is a member of the EC3 Board of Directors. She's a dancer, a filmmaker, a scholar, and has special research interests in the area of disability arts and inclusion. And she's an award-winning academic, an award-winning filmmaker, and we're delighted to have her with us tonight.
Thank you so much, Sue, for that introduction. I will add that I do partner with Anishinaabe Kwe elders as well as Black queer settler elders in Peterborough, Nugojwanong, and disabled persons to create art through which grows desire for aging, disability, embodied difference, and meaningful reconciliation within Peterborough, Nugojwanong, and beyond. So thank you, candidates, for being here. My question is as follows. Is my volume all right? Thanks, Gabe. Thumbs up from Gabe, okay. So in recent years, the growth of the Black Lives Matter movement and the ongoing discoveries of mass graves at former Indian residential schools have once again spotlighted the unique challenges faced by people who are Black, Indigenous, and people of color. In Canada, the history of colonialism persists, and racialized artists are presented less often, paid less on average for their work, and hired less frequently than by arts institutions than white settler artists. During the COVID-19 pandemic, they have also been less likely to receive government benefits. These issues of marginalization and exclusion also persist for artists who identify as disabled, deaf, or hard of hearing, and for LGBTQ2+ artists. So my question is, if elected, what will you and your party do to support these artists being Black, Indigenous, people of color, disabled, deaf, and LGBTQ2+ artists?
Miriam, could you start us off?
In my role as the Minister for Women and Gender Equality, the application of an intersectional gender lens has been led by my department. And we implemented the action plan that was put forward back in 2016, and we are further sharpening that lens to include a focus on rurality and a focus on race and ethnicity. And I will say also that these lenses matter, but there's no substitute to representation at the table. And I'm among those working with the Prime Minister to enhance equity within the public service. Moving forward, we'll be supporting Black Canadian communities, researchers, artists, and journalists with additional enhancement. We'll be introducing a new disability benefit to create a direct monthly payment for low-income Canadians with disabilities aged 18 to 64. We introduced an entrepreneurship strategy for women and Black entrepreneurship program. We're working to enhance diversity within the corporate board that the federal government, the cabinet particularly, have oversight. And we move forward with pay equity legislation. There's a lot of work to be done, an anti-racism strategy with $100 million invested in it as part of our program, as is, for the first time ever, a data strategy that includes race-based data as a key component of focus with support for scholars with researching their own communities and reporting on it.
Thank you very much, Miriam. Okay, Joy, could you be the second person to respond to that question from Nadine?
Thank you, Nadine, for your question. And equity and access have always been very close to my heart as an activist in all of these intersectional areas that you mention. Equity-seeking groups need a voice. We are in a different time, and we need to revisit the access and equity priorities, we need to increase funding. We need to create new legislation on a federal level to make sure that the arts platform reflects what's happening in Canadian society. And this is a time of rising up. Black Lives Matters, missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls, a Truth and Reconciliation calls to action. 13 of 94 have been addressed, and we're done waiting. We need to revisit priorities based on the Bank of Canada and what priorities we create on a federal level with the Ministry of Heritage. This is deep-seated and it's systemic, and we need to do work to change it, and we need voices that are going to fight for those changes. It's not just something that can be glossed over and done on a minimal level. It has to be done from the bottom up.
Thank you, Joy. Shantae.
Thank you. I think that all of us here can agree that marginalized groups need more support. And I think it's important, Professor, thank you for the question, that you raise the point about BIPOC individuals who suffer at the hands of certain government rules. The Green Party definitely recognizes that BIPOC individuals, as well as disabled peoples, have been the hardest hit from COVID-19. This is why one of the reasons why we want to support more so Indigenous people is because they need our support. We plan to provide protection for individual intellectual and artistic property rights, as well as support the creation of historical information that sheds light on our colonial past, wherever related plaques are in place. It's important that we recognize the past and make reconciliation attempts to get moving in the future.
Okay, thank you, Shantae. Miriam,
Yes, sir.
I just like to say your name, Miriam.
Aw. My grandfather gave it to me.
And a lovely name it is. Almost as lovely as Finn Leach's name. Finn Leach is the curator at the Art Gallery of Peterborough, previously the executive director and curator at Artspace, Peterborough's artist-run center. And we're delighted she could be with us here tonight because she plays such an important role in the arts community. Finn, what do you want to talk to the candidates about?
My question is regarding capital funding. The arts have a key role to play in recovery, both tangibly and intangibly. It is a sector of mending relationships, of hope, of collective questioning and connection. It is also a driver of economic development. We must make sure that arts institutions are supported and able to continue bringing audiences and art together. Will you and your parties ensure that the current program at Canadian Heritage, specifically speaking to cultural spaces, that supports capital development for facilities be maintained and preferably enhanced? And would you lower the requirements for the matching funds ratio currently in place to accommodate for the negative impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic on fundraising opportunities?
So, the question is about physical infrastructure, capital funding, and the Canadian Heritage Program, cultural spaces. And Miriam, Joy, no, I think Joy, it's your turn to go first.
Is that okay?
Mm-hmm.
So I have been just so interested in learning and listening, and just so impressed how this community and the Arts Alive Fund supported artists and arts organizations through the pandemic. Is just incredible. But absolutely, the capital funding and the Canada Council funding and the heritage funding, CERB was helpful. CERB needs to be continued as we move forward, and I know the New Democrats are insisting that be the case. And for sure, the capital funding needs to be upheld. We need to fight for more. All of this is so essential because we know that, the losses and recovering from the losses from the first 3 waves were incredible. I understand it was $500 million or more in revenue that was lost, and the province gave a small portion and other provinces gave more. It's going to be really difficult unless we make sure that that capital funding is in place, supported, and we fight for more. Absolutely.
Thank you, Joy. Just on a technical note, the province of Ontario gave $26 million in COVID recovery and resilience funding, and the province of British Columbia gave $126 million. So for a province with a much smaller population and a smaller arts community. Joy, that was great. Thank you. Miriam.
Thank you so much, Finn, for your question. Absolutely. I think one of the first announcements I made as your member of parliament was at the Art Gallery of Peterborough. And we've been able to secure funding for the Canadian Canoe Museum, among many others. I know that there are some applications that are underway, thanks to the amazing Karen August, a member of my team, working to push those forward in Ottawa. Yes, a re-elected Liberal government will maintain our historic infrastructure program. One of the things that we changed due to COVID too was increase the amounts that the federal government would put on the table, up to, for example, the internet program that I'm responsible for. In some cases, up to 90% of the cost was covered by the federal government. We also commit to hold a summit within 100 days of forming government to discuss with experts and artists themselves ways to restart the industry. And I think if the conversation is around enhancing these funding envelopes, that summit would be an opportunity to do so. Do I have any more time left? Okay. I didn't address reconciliation and a feminist recovery within my last response. I ran out of time and I got a little nervous. Canada, because of the work that my team and our government did during COVID, we've been recognized as having the best intersectional feminist response to COVID in the world. We don't take that for granted. There is work to be done. And I'm now seeing the card, but I really want to let you know that that position that Canada is holding as being the best at applying that intersectional gendered lens is something we want to maintain. We're going to share our strategies with other governments, including the US, and we'll continue, and of course, if I'm re-elected, I'll continue to be a champion for equity and inclusion in Ottawa.
Thank you, Miriam. Shantae, we're going to come round to you on this question of capital funding and of the Cultural Spaces program at Canadian Heritage.
Thank you. So the Green Party definitely believes that we need to support more so the cultural infrastructure that surrounds this industry. We also believe that we should increase support for indoor and outdoor spaces required to adapt to COVID and compliant with COVID regulations. Additionally, we believe that funding for museums should also increase, upwards in $25 million in post-pandemic reopening and accessible digital spaces as well. And we definitely believe that there should be more incentives for artists to travel, because how else are we able to share our talent and our joy with other people in our community? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, and Joy? Miriam, Shantae, Joy. We're done. It's a good thing Kate's paying attention. This is good. She's always good with me. This way, I really can't function without her. Emily Martin, who's been my partner in many of these events here at Showplace, and who stayed very calm when we were planning this one, and none of it could happen the way it usually happens, and it wasn't a slam dunk. And thank you so much for your leadership in getting this event together, Emily. Take it away.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Sue. And thank you to the candidates for coming tonight and everybody for coming. I just want to take a moment to thank you all for coming out. I really echo hearing about the emotion coming into the building. This is the first event we've had at Showplace in almost a year. And yes, thank you. So thank you to everybody for their patience coming in tonight. You know, being able to welcome my technical director back into the place to work at this event tonight, Rael, is just, it's been a very emotional day on our part as well. So thank you so much for doing this tonight. So my question is about relief and recovery funding. Federal COVID-19 relief and recovery funding, such as CERB, CEBA, CEWS, and CSRS, has been essential to ensuring the survival of many arts organizations, particularly performing arts venues. However, the successful reopening and recovery in the arts sector will be a multi-year recovery process, meaning tough times for the downtown and the local tourism sector as well, that will require more long-term funding to assist in planning for reopening. If you could please explain which programs your government will maintain and for how long. Will you provide additional funding to Canadian Heritage and the Canada Council for the Arts to maintain and enhance their recovery and resiliency program supplements? And how will you work to ensure a speedy and robust recovery for our sector?
That's a big, powerful one. And Shantae, I don't think you've had a chance to go first for a while, so I'm going to turn it over to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Like you stated in your question, thank you so much, Emily. COVID has really shown us how much our society needs a guaranteed livable income. CERB was a great initiative, and it definitely helped a lot of people, but it also didn't allow for enough people to access the services. As well, it was quite difficult for other people to access these benefits. The Green Party believes in a guaranteed livable income because we need to support our communities. Things like this allow the province to produce their own expenditures on provincial welfare, and national guaranteed livable income would liberate provincial budgets for the health budgets that they have asked Ottawa to support. It's very important that we maintain these supports for Canadians because, like I said, COVID has shown us how vulnerable our societies are and our community members. So it's very important to have this funding available for all who need it. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Shantae. Joy.
Thank you so much, and it's great to be here in this space. The last time I was here was with my daughter for Mini Pop Kids, and it was really a wonderful show. That was just before the pandemic, too. I just wanted to say that, again, that governance, federal governance, needs to create new priorities for the arts. The funding template is old. It's not progressive enough. It's not equity-based enough. As stated earlier, we need to generate new funding based on new priorities and a new template for the arts. We need additional funding. You know, the thing about the federal government is that we do have the Bank of Canada, and you know, that's how we generated so much in this pandemic, to be able to give extra transfer payments to provinces to provide the COVID relief. That's how we generated it. And as we move forward and rise through the pandemic, we need to be able to create new priorities, to create new pots of money that are relevant and apply to the new world that we're living in. We have to do that, just like we need to for the climate emergency. We need to do that for the arts, because the arts are the language of the people. It's how we communicate, it's how we educate, it's how we reconcile, and it's how we heal. So our government needs to do that. We need to have a new perspective, and I know that New Democrats believe it in their souls that the arts need to be elevated. And I want to be part of that, and we need to create new systems, new pots, and the Canada Council, the Canadian Heritage funding, all of that needs to be extended. It needs to be larger, and we need to revisit this very quickly with a new government, and New Democrats will do that.
Thank you very much. And Miriam.
Thanks, Sue, and thank you, Emily. We've committed $1.9 billion to get arts, culture, and heritage through the pandemic, and an additional $200 million for major festivals. The pandemic is not yet over, and we're committed to finishing the fight against COVID with vaccine mandates, with additional investments in public health, and additional supports in mental health, with a permanent mental health fund, supports for addictions, problematic substance use, including opioids. And moving forward, I think, if you look at our recovery plan, it's focused entirely on those individuals and sectors hardest hit by COVID. $10 a day childcare, it's about getting tens of thousands of women back to work and then a few more. Look at this panel, it's all women. Women have been taken out of the workforce, and $10 a day childcare will help. Billions more invested in the tourism sector, particularly to help the sector get through this winter, is part of our commitment. The work that we're doing also to modernize institutions like Telefilm, like the National Film Board, like Canada Media Fund, and funding tools that support Canada's audiovisual sector, including video games, will support particularly traditionally underrepresented groups, will be supporting Indigenous Screen Office with an additional $13 million a year in permanent funding. I'm going through various lists here, various items here, because the Liberal Party of Canada believes and have shown that investing in the arts, investing in culture and heritage is an improvement to the quality of life that we all enjoy, but also it creates jobs. So it's definitely part of our economic recovery plan as well.
Thank you, Miriam. Right on time.
Well, we have a great timekeeper.
We do. One of the best. Thank you very much. So, if I am correct, all of the candidates have had an opportunity to answer a question from our expert panelists. But we do have time in our schedule for any of the panelists to provide a follow-up question. If you want to talk to something adjacent or speak to something adjacent to your subject or take a deeper dive into your subject, now's the time to do it. Any follow-ups? People are good with the answers you've received? Okay, thank you. Thank you all very much, panelists. Let's give a round of applause. Thank you to the candidates for your answers. Don't forget, you can check out the party platforms in detail on the Electric City Culture Council website. Gabe, do we have questions coming in from the ether?
We do have some questions. Yeah, we do have some questions coming in. For the people at home, if you would like to have your question included, there's a link to a Google form in the YouTube chat and in the YouTube video description. But we'll start off with a question. This question comes from Crystal Jones. As an artist who relies on the creation of fine art nude images, my work often intersects with sex work and sex workers. Do you believe sex work is real work? And how does your party plan to protect and support sex workers?
Very interesting intersection here. One of my special areas of interest, in fact, the relationship between art and sexuality. So, Gabe, if I'm right, the question is, how will your party protect sex workers? Do you recognize sex work as...
The question is, do you believe sex work is real work?
Real work.
And how does your party plan to protect and support sex workers?
Including those working in the arts. Joy, I'm going to ask you to take the lead on that one, if you would.
Yes, and is speaking for Joy, sex work is absolutely real work, and we need to fight to protect sex workers. Not everybody else thinks that. And we need to make sure that sex workers are safe, that they have access to public health and have all their needs and all the security and the needs and the care that every individual has. And certainly New Democrats speak to protect the rights of sex workers and promote that in our communities, absolutely. And we need to be positive and encouraging of all aspects of the arts, including fine art and the work of modeling. It's critical to painting and fine art. And thank you for the question. It's a very important one.
Thank you, Joy. Thanks for staying on time. Shantae, this is an important question, and we're over to you now.
Definitely, the Green Party definitely recognizes that sex work is real work. And it's very important that we protect the people who are going into these ventures. Protecting sex workers and sex work is something that we really support. In March 2021, the Canadian Alliance for Sex Work Law Reform, which represents 25 groups that work with members of the sexual trade, launched a constitutional challenge in the Ontario Superior Court of Justice. They argued that the laws violate provisions of the Charter of Rights and Freedoms and have launched a constitutional challenge to most of the sex work provisions that were implemented in the 2014 under the Protections for Communities and Exploited Persons Act. It's really important, like I stated before, that we protect these individuals and create an environment for them where they feel safe. Thank you.
Thank you for telling us the Green Party's point of view on that one. And Miriam.
Thank you for your question, Crystal. I believe that it's important to distinguish between human trafficking, and sex work. And certainly I'm committed to advocating and modernizing the existing legislation, which is in desperate need of that modernization. As part of the work I've done with the gender-based violence strategy that the federal government put in place, the first of its kind, we made sure that sex workers, their realities and their voices were part of that strategy, and I'll continue to create space for those voices and advocate for better protection and more modernized legislation.
Thank you, Miriam. Gabe, can we have another question from our YouTube watchers?
I believe we also have some questions in the audience, so maybe we'll take one
Take one from the audience? Okay.
does
Peg,
anyone have-
I think you have one.
All right. Please tell us your name and your question.
Okay, thank you, Gabe. Peg McCracken. Can I take this out? Peg McCracken. I'm an EC3 board member and general manager of the Peterborough Singers. My question is in regard to the CBC. And I just want to say, Aaron O'Toole has stated that, and I quote, "The CBC is out of control and in need of reform. I'll slash funding for English TV and CBC News Network and end funding for digital news," end quote. This is not just a vague threat to review CBC's funding, as past leadership candidates have stated. It's a very specific policy. Can each candidate tonight explain if their party supports full public funding of the CBC, or do they plan to reduce funding and sell off assets of the public broadcaster to private interests? Thank you.
Thanks, Peg. Would not be an Arts Canada debate without a question on the CBC. Shantae, could you tell us what the Green Party's platform is on the CBC?
Yes, I just want to ask if you could repeat the last line of the question, please. Sorry.
The last little bit says, can each candidate please explain if their party fully supports public funding of the CBC, or do they plan to reduce funding and sell off assets of the public broadcaster to private interests?
So the Green Party definitely supports the CBC. The Green government will proceed with the regulating of powerful platforms on streaming services through the Canadian Radio, Television, Telecommunications Commission, as envisioned in Bill C-10. As well, we will ensure that the CRTC receives more bandwidth for independent and non-profit stations. As well, we agree that we need to provide stable funding, a stable base funding for the CBC so that it can continue to provide quality Canadian content, whether that's television or radio, programming in both official languages, as well as programming both to encourage as well as the learning for Indigenous peoples and their languages. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mariam?
Thank you for your question, Peg. And certainly during the pandemic, we've all been glued to our screens, and the role of the public broadcaster has been further highlighted. I saw that video, and I was appalled for many reasons, including the attack on CBC. A re-elected Liberal government will provide $400 million over 4 years to CBC and Radio Canada so that it's less reliant on public advertising, with the goal of eliminating advertising during news and other public affairs shows. Will increase the production of national, regional, and local news. Will strengthen Radio Canada International, our voice for peace, democracy, and universal human values on the world stage, and will make sure that Indigenous voices and cultures are present on our screens, TVs, and radios, and will bring Canada's TV and film production to the world. That, I say all that, thank you very much. I say all of that, and, democracy matters. And the role of the broadcaster is also one that protects our sovereignty as a country. It connects us across divides, and as we see out there, particularly on the campaign trail, this is the time to connect Canadians, particularly through our stories and through our unique experiences, and dismantling the CBC, like Mr. O'Toole, who emphatically committed to it, is the biggest disservice that one could do for democracy and for Canadian identities.
Thank you, Mariam. Joy.
Thank you. It's interesting to hear parties' pre-election commitments. A new Democrat government will increase funding for CBC and Radio Canada to help reverse the damage of decades of funding cuts under both Liberal and Conservative governments. Public broadcasting has a remarkable legacy of connecting all points of our country, and it needs to have an even stronger future now, more than ever, to help make sure that Canadians have access to accurate, relevant information no matter where they live. And in fact, the CBC is rated 16th out of 18 developed countries in terms of lowest funded public broadcasting. That's shameful, and we need to do something about that urgently. We need a broadcaster that is for the people and will tell us what we need to know at such a critical time in our history.
Thank you, Joy. Thanks for your question, Peg, on the CBC. Gabe, where would you like to go now?
Let's go back to the online people. We're going to take a question from Braden, who says, how would your government support new art startups needing funding for their new enterprise? Many sole proprietors can't get funding from a bank.
So, art startups. Any specific policies, programs, or approaches to art startups and supporting them? And I'm trying to see who started the last time. I think it was Shantae, so Mariam will let you go forward this time.
Step one, Braden, is to finish the fight against the pandemic and the vaccine mandates. Additional investment in public health will do that. We're providing supports to entrepreneurs, not just with one of the lowest taxes in the G7, but investments to make sure that you're able to hire the best talent out there. I think that summit that we're hosting within 100 days of being re-elected is going to ensure that the voices of these startups are part of the conversation. And then to help you succeed abroad as a startup, we're going to support Canadian cultural industries abroad by issuing a mandate to BDC and EDC, these are crown corporations, to support the growth of your industry in new markets so that that startup then can scale up and venture out into new markets. I've also heard from artists who have care responsibilities. And Braden, that $10 a day childcare program is for entrepreneurs as well as artists who are workers as well. $10 a day childcare is going to save folks in our community, parents in our community, up to $12,000 per year. Our commitment to help you buy your first home, to save up for your first home, to pay less mortgage every month is going to help you have more money to invest back in your business. And Braden, I really hope that I get to be your member of parliament, because I would then invite you to come to my office so that we can have a conversation about how we can support you and what other entities exist here in Peterborough-Kawartha to help you lift off and scale up.
All right. Thank you, Miriam. Speaking of lifting off and scaling up, Shantae, how would the Green Party support new art startups?
Thank you so much, Braden, for your question. So the Green Party really believes in talent and artists, especially local artists. A green government will provide funding to promote and encourage artists and art events to enhance Canada's rural regions, as well as provide funding incentives to support all of our artists from our rural communities as well. Additionally, a green government will provide incentives to all provinces and territories to restore and improve art and culture components in schools and extracurricular activities, not only in urban but also in rural communities, with a particular focus on encouraging new and emerging artists like yourself. As well, we wish to establish a universal broadband strategy to give Canadians across the country and in remote areas access to reliable internet so you can share your talent with everybody that wants to watch you. Thank you.
Thank you, Shantae. And Joy, new art startups.
Well, thank you so much, Braden, for the question. And certainly that feels so positive, just the idea of the energy behind new art startups. Part of the NDP platform is creating vibrant communities and communities that embrace the arts. And what we really need to do, there are many aspects to this that we need to tackle, but we need to widen the spectrum. We need to make sure that there are more opportunities for more people from different communities to engage in new startups in the arts. You know, we know that there aren't many professional artists that come from BIPOC communities, as we've mentioned. We need to have internships. We need to connect with social media, create presentations, but we need to create an art of inclusion. And, you know, I think that we need to leverage different levels of government, municipal, provincial, federal, can put pressure on. We can talk together as communities during this time to make sure that we have a more robust Ontario Arts Council access. The text for LGBTQ artists was removed from recent priorities in the Ontario language. We need to make sure that we widen the spectrum, provide more opportunities, and leverage so that we have increased funding for new art startups.
Joy, thank you very much. If you haven't filled out the Ontario Arts Council Strategic Plan Survey, you should do so before Sunday. Thank you for that question, Braden. That was a really, really interesting one. Shall I go to the audience, Gabe?
Go to the audience next.
I think Bill Kimball, who's the president of the board of EC3,
is being volunteered.
The director of Public Energy Performing Arts, has a really, really interesting question on charitable organizations and charitable tax legislation.
This comes from the Canadian Arts Coalition. It's an issue that is really a national one, and it's been bubbling under the surface for a long time. As a result of the pandemic, organizations have relied heavily on support from donors to help combat their significant revenue loss. Now, there are various ways the government could implement measures to help support the charitable sector, such as matching donations or eliminating the capital gains tax on gifts to charitable organizations. Please explain how your party would support the charitable sector and incentivize investment in the arts and culture.
Okay, so that's a very technical one. Do you need the question repeated, or are you good? We're good. You're good?
We're okay. I think we're okay for now.
You're okay? All right, then I'm going to ask Joy to jump in there.
Well, I mentioned just learning about the Arts Alive Fund and how much back in spring of 2020 in the pandemic was achieved, and how the community and people got together to create donations. And, with all the venues being shut, commissions being lost, exhibitions, all of that. The registered charitable status is the piece. And that's what's required to issue the charitable tax receipts for large donations. I think that it needs to be given mind to, it needs to be honed, it needs to be something that going forward, because we're not through with this pandemic, and we need to be prepared around this piece. And we can work on the taxation and the charitable status aspect to make sure that donations can come and flow more freely as we go forward.
Thank you very much. Miriam.
Thank you, Bill Kimball, and thank you for teaching us all how to use a microphone. The charitable sector is an essential sector, and COVID allowed all of us to recognize that. It employs about 2 million workers in this country. 3/4 of them are women. It is one of the sectors that employs young people, Black, Indigenous, racialized folks, those with disabilities and exceptionalities. And in the work that I've done all my life here in Peterborough-Kawartha, it has been essential to my well-being. A Liberal government will move forward and consult on the future of the sector, because COVID has certainly changed it, but change was already underway with the age of volunteers, with the capacity to volunteer. The sector is undergoing changes that were accelerated during the pandemic. That conversation needs to be had, and we have to make sure that this riding has a very prominent voice in the future of the sector. Your ideas about matching and about taxation and capital gains, these are all parts of the conversation moving forward. I think that the living wage conversation has to be included within the sector, as well as unpaid internships that are all too often are present within the sector. I think that conversation happening, that review happening in parallel to the review and the modernization of arts, culture, and heritage sectors is going to be significant. And I'm going to be counting on EC3 and the Recovery Alliance to make sure that our experiences and our voices are prominent in those conversations.
Thank you, Miriam. Shantae.
Thank you. I think one of the biggest ways that we can really help the art sector is by finishing this battle that we're having right now with COVID. COVID has shown us how important and how vital the art sector is, and it's very important that we adapt practices that prevent us from going into another pandemic like this. The Green Party wishes to reform the Canada Revenue Act to allow arts and cultures workers to benefit from a tax averaging plan that will take into account the fact that some years often you do better than other years. It's very important that we do this. We also believe in charities, but we also believe that if you have the amount of money that you need to support the arts, that you should be able to contribute that freely. As well, we wish to establish permanent funding for festivals and events that celebrate Canadian heritage, because this is so important. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Shantae. And Joy, you answered this question. All right, I know we definitely have one other question from the audience. I don't know if we have another one in the ether.
We do. We've
For
got one online.
Wonderful YouTube.
It is
watchers.
Admittedly a bit of a pot-stirring question, but it received a lot of support in the YouTube chat, and I'm just a humble avatar for the YouTube chat.
Posturing from the arts community?
Pot-stirring.
Oh, my goodness.
From Alex Burke. We've heard some vague talk about the local art scene. Can the candidates name 10 working artists from here?
Give you a minute to think.
Okay, well, some of them are sitting here. Does that count?
Okay, so Miriam, who are the working artists that you see on the panel here?
Okay, well, from Nadine Changfoot to the amazing Finn, Emily, Alicia, and yourself, Sudita. Jonathan Bennett is a friend of mine, and he's also a decent writer. We have folks like Jessica Melnick and her work, Jeremy Kelly and his work. Oh my goodness, this is intense. Alex, yourself, of course, your father and your brother. Holy moly, this is tough.
Okay, we'll give you a bit of a break. Shantae, can you pick it up here and name 5 local artists?
5 local artists. Well, of course, you, Sue.
I'm not an artist, honestly. I appreciate your nod to my creativity, but everybody on the panel is laughing because I have not a personal creative bone in my body.
Kate. I forgot Kate.
Of course, Kate, yes. We have Robert Gibson, who is also a member of my team. There's Jill Stanley, Rob.
Jill
Rob
Slavey, a
Fortin.
musician. Rob
Yeah.
Fortin's a musician. Yep.
Drew Hayden Taylor, Sue Norman, so many people.
That's very good. Thank you, Shantae.
Thank you.
And Joy.
Well,
Peterborough artists.
We have Kate Story. We have Nadine at the end. We have Finn, Emily, Alicia. We have Sean Conway, who is my friend, counselor at Curve Lake. I also had Drew Hayden Taylor. We have Bo Dixon, the artist. David Berger, who is my friend and a guitar player, musician. I think that might be 10.
We're getting a good list, but I think it's a really interesting and important moment in the discussion and an important part of the debate. We did have questions about support for, encouragement for, and the value of the individual artists. And I think all of us, I'm an arts administrator, I'm a policy wonk, I'm a curator, but I'm not an artist. And Finn would not consider herself an artist. What? Emily doesn't consider herself an artist. And I think it's really important that we all remember art only comes from one place. It comes from the artists. And if we don't sustain artists in an ongoing and meaningful way, there will be no art. And in fact, there used to be a great advocacy campaign called The Day Without Art. Who's old enough to remember that campaign? Bill's nodding his head. Well, thank you very much. Those were some great artists, and I just have to say Bo Dixon is a member of the EC3 board. Okay, I'm going to go to a question in the audience from Sarah Cullingham. This is in the studio audience here.
Thank you, Sue. Thank you, candidates, for being here tonight. I'm Sarah. I'm a member of the EC3 board and a PhD student at Trent. And my question is, beyond the pandemic, the arts and culture sector in Canada has been and continues to grapple with the urgent need for climate action. If elected, how do you plan on addressing the climate emergency in the arts sector, including through federal public funding?
It's a really good one. Shantae, I thought we might start with you on that one, because I think the Green Party has some policy platforms in this area.
Yeah, we definitely do. It's important to note that artists influence public policy more so than an army of politicians. That's why we need to fully support them to engage with the climate emergency. So today it can be said that singers, actors, authors, playwrights, painters, makers of public art, multimedia creators, and the producers and publishers who make their work accessible have more influence on people's lives and thoughts, like I said, than an army of politicians. The Green Party would like to increase funding to $1 billion over the course of 3 years to all Canada's arts and culture organizations including the Canada Council for the Arts, Telefilm Canada, orchestras, theaters, galleries, and publishers. Thank you.
Thank you. Joy.
And thank you for the question. You know, artists certainly are the voice of our society, and you know, in terms of our response to the climate emergency, it is so pivotal, and we need to lift the voices up who communicate those messages so well in different ways, through telling stories, through reconciliation. We know that the national chief has talked about the climate emergency being so important, so we need to in chorus together and in partnership with Indigenous people, talk about how we can address the climate emergency together. So that's a really important piece, and our party platform supports more funding for reconciliation and the climate emergency in tandem, and as a unit, knit together, we do that together. And with our Green New Deal, we need to proclaim that from the mountaintops, that we need good green jobs, and we can create them through the arts, and make that happen in a very real way.
Thank you. Okay, Gabe, we might have time for one more, if there is one more. Oh, Miriam, sorry.
Thank you, Kate. Sorry.
I apologize sincerely, Miriam.
No, you're rocking it. You're rocking it. Sarah, thank you for your question. Your very effective timekeeping. The Liberal Party of Canada is the only party this election offering Canadians the option to fight climate change and create jobs in the process. And in fact, our plan has received top grades from key economists and climate activists, including former NDP and former Green Party leaders. Our infrastructure program, and we spoke about cultural spaces, infrastructure has a triple bottom line component to it. So that's baked right in. Our investments in reconciliation include investments in Indigenous elders and scholars so that they can be part of the work. They have much to teach, and we have much to learn. The pricing pollution scheme that we put forward is working, and we're pricing polluters, and we're giving money right back to folks through their tax returns. And we're going to continue to invest in artists so that you can tell the story of climate change, so that you can bridge divides. And certainly in this great big country of ours, there are a lot of divides, particularly when it comes to rural, urban, west, prairies, and the rest. And it's important, and in fact, I think it's the only way to have artists and creators themselves bridge those divides, because we have to move forward together, and we can't afford to break up the country in the process.
Thank you, Miriam.
Or questions from the internet, but I believe one of our panelists has another question. Emily.
Follow up from Emily Martin.
I sure do. Thank you so much. Just through some of the questions tonight, this one I really just wanted to ask. One of the forgotten groups in our industry and during this pandemic is our technical staff, many of whom were laid off and needed to find other means of employment. We're actually facing a huge gap in this integral part of our industry, both in current techs and in the next generation of technicians coming in. And we need support in getting them back while not being able to necessarily support them because of our reduced capacities and the unknown around when these capacities will be lifted. And I just want to know how your party will support these talented workers and our efforts in bringing them back to work, many of whom did not qualify for many of the benefits that came out during COVID.
That's something that's come up a lot in the Performing Arts Recovery Alliance discussions. It's a really crucial one. Shantae, could you start us off on the discussion of what kind of programs your party might bring in to support bringing technicians back to work and keeping them in the arts venues?
Definitely. So the Green Party supports a guaranteed livable income. So through the creation of this program, we'd be able to help all the wonderful people who help make these performances come to life. They're such a vital aspect of the arts community, and it's important that we support them. It's not just the talent on the stage, it's the people backstage too, and we all work together to get these processes, and get these performances on the stage. That's why it's so important to vote green and get a guaranteed livable income in the hands of all the Canadians who really need it and would benefit, such as the tech staff and industries like the arts. Thank you.
Thank you. Miriam?
Thank you for your question, Emily, and many thanks to the tech crew here today, doing all sorts of magic to make sure that we can have this important conversation. I think that the new arts and cultural recovery program that's going to match ticket sales for performing arts, live theater, and other cultural venues to compensate for reduced capacity is part of the solution. I think that having that EI review include workers in the sector is part of the solution. And I certainly believe that the conversations that need to happen about the future of arts, culture, and heritage as a whole, which we've committed to doing within 100 days of forming government, will offer other opportunities for solutions. And then, I think my fellow Green candidate and I are on the same page about this piece too. The best way forward for every sector, particularly for artists, including technicians, is to finish the fight against the pandemic. And what we're seeing out there, despite the fact that so many have moved forward, made sacrifices, got double vaxxed, there's still resistance. And if there's something that every single person, particularly those watching, can do with the power of peer-to-peer outreach on your social media feeds, in your conversations with loved ones, is press the need for everyone to get vaccinated. It's the most effective tool that we have to fight COVID, and life will not return to normal if we're going through lockdowns and shutdowns in the future, and I'm sure we're all tired of all that.
Thank you, Miriam.
So,
Joy?
sorry, is it my turn? I didn't.
Yes, it is. I have your name right here.
Thank you so much, Sue. And thank you for the question, Emily. So in terms of returning to the workforce, we know how important technicians are, and I think the pandemic is shedding light on how deeply impactful it is to specific groups within the theater and arts world. We see the deeper impact in so many ways for technicians, and we need to come up with more permanent solutions for these difficult, challenging times as we go forward. We need to make sure that there are incentives, that we can create some government incentives, that we can create some subsidies. As we create more robust funding for the arts, this needs to be part of the equation, and it has to be more permanent. We do probably need to extend CERB for the time being. We need to make sure that's there. New Democrats have fought for that because we do need to have enough to sustain ourselves in those gaps of employment. We fought not for $1,000 a month, but for $2,000 a month. That was New Democrats in Parliament doing that. So we need to make sure that we take care of all of our community, and especially to elevate our tech workers in the arts.
Thank you very much. That was a great question, and thanks. We're coming into the closing part of the evening tonight. We wanted to offer each of the candidates 2 minutes to wrap up. This is the part of the night where I think all of our watchers and viewers and listeners, people here in the studio, have an opportunity to hear something concrete about how each of the parties think about the arts, the value of the arts, and what their party will do, if elected, to support the arts community, creators, as well as presenters. And I think we'll go back to our original order, which had, who was starting? I think it had Miriam starting.
You got it. Okay. Thank you so much for this semblance of normalcy. and for this really important conversation. Many thanks to those who are watching in their homes. I hope you're safe and well. What I can commit to you, if re-elected as your member of parliament, I'll always show up. I'll be there. I'll listen to you. I'll learn from you. When you find creative ways to remind us that there's a difference between artist and administrator, I'll sit there and I'll scribble my chicken scratch notes so that next time around I know better. I'll continue to be your voice in Ottawa and make sure that Peterborough-Kawartha's priorities are shaping national policies and programs. And I'll continue to advocate for a feminist recovery that includes artists and creators as well as Artspace organizations and institutions. You know, the incredible opportunity I've had at PCVS, I've not only found a little bit of myself through that program, but I've been able to connect with incredible humans like Tia Kavanagh and Jess Melnick and so many others who are adding to the quality of life here in Peterborough-Kawartha. And I know this sector has been hard hit. I know, particularly for performing arts, you're going to be among the last to come back, and I know that you're all grieving so much loss, those empty seats and those empty halls. One of the commitments that a Liberal government will put forward, in addition to investing billions more to ensure that you come back and come back strong, is that you're part of our economic recovery. You are part of our jobs plan. And we're going to need you, artists and creators and arts-based organizations, to keep doing what you're doing, because we're all going to need to make sense of this thing that just happened to us. And no one can help us make sense of it better than you. I hope that this weekend at advanced polls or on September 20th on Election Day, you put an X next to my name. And I promise to be there for you and have your back just as you had mine.
Thank you very much, Miriam. Joy.
Thank you. Arts and culture are the heart of who we are as Canadians. I feel that deeply, and it's been a wonderful time being with you here. Yes, I'm new to Peterborough, but I love the arts, and I'm excited to get to know this community more, and I'm excited to listen and learn and participate, be an activist for the arts. And if I'm elected, I will roll up my sleeves and work as hard as I possibly can to elevate the arts and arts funding, both in the Canada Council and in Canadian Heritage funding, all of that. We need a new approach to funding the arts in Canada. It needs to include reconciliation, and we need to have our Indigenous elders and artists leading us. We need to revision our landscape as artists, creators, technicians, all of the community that makes up the arts world here in Peterborough-Kawartha. We need to do that together. We need to collaborate. We need to talk. And I'm excited to be able to do that, and I will be present. I will be here, and I will put my head to it, my heart to it. We need to level the playing field. We need to make sure that our funding is stable and robust for arts and culture institutions. We need to invest in Indigenous theatre. The National Arts Centre, New Democrats are committed to that. We want to do everything we can to have the voice of the arts communicate the stories that need to be told in our time right now. I hope that you'll think about voting for me and check the box for Joy LaChica. I'll work hard for you in Peterborough-Kawartha.
Thank you, Joy. Shantae will give the last word to you tonight.
Thank you. I want to thank all the organizers for putting this event together, as well as all the panelists, my fellow candidates. By now, you've probably realized that I'm a black woman with the last name White running for the Greens. I'm the improbable candidate. But Canada is an improbable country. And if you believe that you should vote with your hopes and not your fears, then I'm asking you to vote for me and vote Green. If you believe we should let the fear-mongering give way to the hope-mongering, then vote Green. One senior in this riding told me when I was canvassing that in an effort to leave this world a better place. She wants to leave her home to her granddaughter and her husband and their grandchildren by voting green in this election. I can't think of a better legacy. Because if we don't confront this existential threat head on, it's the children and the grandchildren who will be the biggest losers. Let's listen to the better angels of our nature and do the right thing when it comes to Indigenous nations and communities, as well as the First Canadians. Let's do the right thing and not hold an election when so many new Canadians are stuck behind the stone wall of a Taliban-controlled Afghanistan. It means we have to be bold enough to admit to ourselves that we might not have a snowball's chance of winning an election, but we're hopeful at the same time that we can make a difference in our country and our community. On September 20th, I'm asking you to vote for me and vote green. Thank you.
Thank you, Shantae. Well, we're wrapping up the evening, and I just can't thank the candidates enough for being with us here tonight, for the time and effort you put into preparing for this debate, for the work you put into, I know many of you put into your party's platforms on arts and culture, and just for taking the time out and making arts, culture, and heritage a priority in your agenda of candidates' meetings. It really means a lot to all of us to have you here. It's very exciting for a number of people in our community, people of my generation who remember when there weren't debates like this, when arts, culture, and heritage was not an important part of any campaign, any level of campaign. So the fact that you're taking your time and giving your energy to this makes a real difference to us and means a lot. To the expert panel, thanks for working on your questions, for taking time out to be here tonight. As many of you know, these are all people who contribute a great deal to our community, not just the arts community, but a very broad cross and intersectional space in our community, and this is just one of the many things that they do during the year to secure and make sure that our community thrives. To everyone who's part of the coalition, it's always exciting how fast the emails come back every time we do an arts vote saying, yes, we want to be part of it, and here's our question, or here's how we can help. You'll see their names flash up on the wall there, and at the end of the show tonight. To the terrific EC3 board, many of whom are here tonight, once again to Showplace, to Emily Martin and Pat Hooper for managing the front door and making sure the setup was safe and secure for everyone. And a huge thank you to Steve Rose and Mike Morit for doing live streaming. I got to tell you, during the tech meeting for this, I think I understood like 4% of what they were talking about, even though I dutifully wrote down Jack locations 10 megabytes up, 5 megabytes down. I don't know what the heck we would have done without them. Trent Radio, who will be broadcasting this several times over the next 2 weeks, Jill Stavely and Rob. The amazing Gabe Pollock. Give a big hand to Gabe Pollock, who really took a big load and did a lot of heavy lifting to get this event happening. He's always fabulous. To the lovely Andy Carroll. Where is Andy, our fearless arts photographer? There he is. EC3 is indebted to our funders, particularly the City of Peterborough, the Ontario Arts Council, the Department of Canadian Heritage, the DBIA, and the Trillium Foundation. Without public funding for the arts, we would not have the thriving community that we have. There's nothing that can replace public funding for the arts in terms of the quality, the quantity, the innovation, and the freedom that it allows in the creative sector. So thank you very much to all of our funders and sponsors. I also want to thank Biz Arts, Business in the Arts, and the Canadian Arts Coalition for all the work they've done on assessing and analyzing the different party platforms. Please look at them on our websites, look at the platforms, look at the comparisons, dig down, see the detail, see which party and which candidate you think makes the strongest case for the arts, and then get out there and vote. Thank you so much for being with us tonight. Don't forget, the election date is September 20th. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to contact EC3. Thanks very much, everybody. Take good care of yourselves. Bye-bye. I took my